Welcome to your Ultimate Exam Prep Explainer. Look, if you're gearing up for that grade 6 history test on ancient India, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're diving straight into the complex but honestly super fascinating philosophies of Jainism and Buddhism. My mission here? To take all those dates, names, and heavy concepts right out of your textbook and transform them into a crystal clear, easy-to-remember study guide. So let's get you ready to absolutely ace this. Here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the quest for simple living, then look at Mahavira and Jainism, followed by Buddha and the middle path. And finally, we'll wrap it all up by comparing the two paths side by side. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the quest for simple living. To really get why Jainism and Buddhism even became a thing, we've got to travel all the way back to the 6th century BCE in ancient India. And let me tell you, society back then was feeling pretty overwhelmed. You had these incredibly rigid caste rules completely dividing everyone up. And on top of that, religious rituals had gotten insanely complex and, frankly, really expensive. Everyday people were just burnt out. They wanted a simpler, more meaningful way to live. They were desperately looking for an escape hatch from all these complicated systems, which beautifully set the stage for two real history heroes to step up and offer a brand new way forward. Which brings us to Section 2, Mahavira and Jainism. Meet Vardhamana Mahavira. Born way back in 599 BCE, he was actually a super wealthy Kshatriya prince. But get this, at age 30, he walked away from it all. He left his comfortable palace, his family, and all those riches behind, just to seek out absolute spiritual truth. The guy wandered and meditated for 12 long years, going through some really extreme penance. But it paid off. He finally attained perfect knowledge and became known as a Jina, which literally translates to the conqueror of the self. Now, a quick heads up for your test. He didn't actually invent Jainism, but he is incredibly important. He's revered as its 24th great teacher, or Tirthankara, making him the absolute central figure of the religion. Okay, listen up. If you only remember one single vocabulary word for Jainism on your exam, make sure it's this one: ahimsa. Ahimsa means absolute nonviolence. And Mahavira wasn't just talking about, avoiding fistfights with other people. He meant extreme nonviolence toward literally all living beings. We're talking about our rules so strict that devout Jain monks actually walk barefoot just to avoid stepping on bugs. They even cover their mouths with a piece of cloth so they don't accidentally breathe in and hurt some tiny flying insect. It's intense. To actually live this super pure, highly disciplined lifestyle, Mahavira taught his followers the 5 great vows. This right here is an essential numbered list you definitely want to memorize for your exam. First up is ahimsa, or nonviolence. Second is satya, which means always telling the truth. Third is asteya, non-stealing. Fourth is aparigraha, meaning you completely let go of any attachment to worldly stuff. And the fifth is brahmacharya, which stands for chastity and total self-control. Now, right alongside those 5 vows, Mahavira taught that the real key to unlocking spiritual freedom was following what he called the Tri Ratnas. Tri means 3, and Ratna means jewel, so the 3 jewels. They are right faith, right knowledge, and right conduct. Basically, you've got to believe in the truth, understand it inside and out, and then actually step up and act on it every single day. So you might be wondering, what's the ultimate goal behind all these strict rules and vows? Well, that brings us to our next big exam definition, moksha. In Jain belief, and actually in ancient Indian philosophy overall, souls are thought to be trapped in this never-ending cycle of karma, birth, and rebirth. Moksha is the absolute ultimate prize. It means your soul is finally liberated, just totally free from that exhausting, endless loop. Over time, as Jainism kept growing, it actually split into 2 main sects. This split was really based on how intensely the followers felt they needed to stick to Mahavira's strict rules. On one side, you've got the Digambaras. Their name literally translates to sky-clad. They are incredibly strict, giving up absolutely all possessions. Yes, including their clothes. On the other side are the Setambaras, which means white-clad. They're a little bit less strict, and their monks and nuns wear simple white robes. Now, because Jainism required such hardcore penance, extreme fasting, and just massive self-discipline, it naturally begs a pretty big question. What if there was a path that wasn't quite so intense? Was there an alternative way to find inner peace back then? Well, let's find out in Section 3, Buddha and the Middle Path. Much like Mahavira, Siddhartha Gautama was born into a wealthy, royal Kshatriya family around 563 BCE. He lived this incredibly sheltered, comfortable life in a palace, but he also chose to leave all that luxury in the dust to seek real answers about life and death. After years of wandering around, he eventually hit a breakthrough. He attained enlightenment while in deep meditation under a peepal tree, which you'll probably recognize as the famous Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya. And from that exact moment forward, he became known as the Buddha, or the Enlightened One. But what actually pushed him to ditch his palace life in the first place? Well, Siddhartha's journey really kicked off when he was 29. He took this fateful chariot ride outside his safe palace walls and witnessed what history calls the four great sights. First, he saw a sick man crying out in pain. Next, an old man struggling. Third, a dead man. And finally, he saw an ascetic, a holy man just sitting there meditating peacefully. These four sights just completely rocked his world. They made him realize that worldly life was packed with inevitable human suffering, but also that finding true spiritual peace was actually possible. Now, remember how Jainism had moksha? Well, Buddhists have their own specific term for escaping this exhausting worldly cycle, and that word is nirvana. Nirvana is the absolute ultimate goal in Buddhism. It's the total end to the cycle of suffering, endless desire, and rebirth. It is pure, total spiritual peace. To help regular, everyday people actually reach nirvana, the Buddha broke down his core philosophy into what we call the Four Noble Truths. Let's walk through these together. Truth number 1, the world is full of suffering. Truth 2, the real root cause of all this suffering is human desire, our constant, endless wanting of things. Truth 3 is the good news. Suffering can absolutely end if we can overcome those desires. And finally, truth 4, the way to actually end those desires is by following the Eightfold Path. And this right here is what makes Buddhism so unique. The Eightfold Path is what the Buddha famously called the middle path. You see, he had tried living as the super rich prince, and he tried living as a totally starving ascetic, and he realized, hey, neither of these extremes actually work. So the Eightfold Path gives us these beautifully balanced rules, things like right speech, right action, and right mindfulness, to help people live peaceful, moral lives without having to choose between extreme hardship or extreme luxury. After the Buddha passed away, his followers obviously needed a way to save all his brilliant teachings. So they were eventually written down in what we call the Tripitaka. That translates directly to the 3 baskets of scripture. These texts, which are packed with rules for monks, stories of the Buddha's life, and deep philosophical breakdowns, were absolutely essential. They gave the monks exactly what they needed to spread the Buddhist message far and wide across Asia. Okay, take a deep breath. We've covered Mahavira and we've covered the Buddha. Now that we've built a really solid foundation for both of these incredible religions separately, it is time to put them head to head. Welcome to Section 4, Comparing the Two Paths. When we put them side by side to look at their similarities, it's honestly incredible. Both movements popped up at roughly the exact same time, mostly because they both wanted to push back against those rigid social caste divisions. They both rejected complicated, super costly Vedic rituals in favor of a much simpler way to worship. They both placed a massive central emphasis on ahimsa, or nonviolence. And finally, both traditions firmly believed that the ultimate goal of human life was liberation from the endless cycle of rebirth, whether you call that moksha or nirvana. But as you'll see when we look at the differences, they were definitely far from identical. When it comes to their way of life, Jainism demanded some seriously extreme self-discipline and harsh penance. Buddhism, on the other hand, taught the much more accessible, balanced middle path. Because Jainism was so incredibly strict, geographically it mostly stayed right there within India. But Buddhism's more practical nature allowed it to spread globally, reaching places like Sri Lanka, China, and Japan. And lastly, while Jainism focuses super intensely on absolute nonviolence to every single tiny living thing, Buddhism's main focus is fundamentally on ending human suffering through wisdom and meditation. And that beautifully ties the whole shebang together. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a quick thought experiment while you review your notes. Imagine you actually lived back in ancient India in the 6th century BCE, feeling totally overwhelmed by society. Which path would you have taken? Would you go for the intense, strict discipline of Mahavira to conquer yourself? Or would you lean toward the balanced, mindful middle path of the Buddha to find your peace? Give it some thought, keep hitting those study guides, and trust me, you are going to do amazing on your exam.